This is going to be your guide to using Inteleon in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. The Generation 9 crisis continues for me because after going over the movesets, after looking at the damage calculations, it makes me wonder, is the entire Pokemon community fraudulent? Now if you're a fan of this channel, you know the answer is yes, but Inteleon should have absolutely gotten more play in Generation 8, especially with Dynamax. Does no one actually understand Pokemon, at least in the West? Because we have a lot of people playing Smogon, but that just makes them worse at Pokemon, or means they suck to begin with and they couldn't handle real Pokemon, so they went to their baby moveset. And then also, a lot of other players that are really bad just end up hacking the game, and they don't understand anything about it. And then the rest of them just kind of ask for Pokepaste because they have no creativity, or again, no game understanding, and then they just use rental teams, which are going to be bad teams to begin with. Is this just kind of the crux of the realization that the removal of battle replays killed competitive Pokemon? Because no one wants to innovate anymore. No one is inspired to show off their cool wins or their cool strategies, and then that's just kind of like spilling over into all the generations, and then there's just no development inside of Pokemon. It's kind of insane. So, just some ideas on Inteleon, and now like we're getting realizations from other Pokemon. That we had 130 special attack being introduced with Glimmora. You specs a Glimmora, and it just like KOs everything. And Inteleon can make up the difference with Surf, because it's like a 5 base power difference as well as Modest, but maybe depending on the meta, like Modest Inteleon to like Wall Break, but also still Sweeper Break could be a possibility. However, it kind of isn't needed, and we are getting into a weird position where a lot of people having to throw out the Hydro Pump, and we're seeing this on Pokemon like the Iron Bundle, but there is that reality where, like, you miss the Hydro Pump and then you just lose the game, which doesn't feel great. But Surf 125 special attack is good, and on 120 speed, that's really good. And if you just specs it, you do crazy amounts of damage. How crazy amounts of damage? Iron Valiant gets KO'd. I said this with the Hisuian Typhlosion video, but like, the damage calculation has to be bugged, right? I'm getting pranked here. Because since when did 7460 get KO'd by Specs Inteleon? This is full health. It's not even torrent activation or like weird crit sniper stuff. There's no terrestrialization, which just makes it stronger. I'm very confused right here. Now, even though like Jolteon just outspeeds and dunks us 65-95, that's going to be kind of like a different tier of tankiness. But we throw that down like, wow, that's almost KO range. So, again, we find, like, the 70-70s and, like, the sweeping Pokemon that are more frail. What's just, like, a Pokemon that kind of exists in a tier that we can blow up with on the Inteleon? I mean, we go Gengar, and yeah, Gengar is 60-75. That's going to be a KO. And that's before we pull shenanigans like Torrent or Critting or all of that stuff. Now, Inteleon's abilities do create, like, a weird identity thing, but that shouldn't have confused players enough to keep them from running Inteleon throughout Generation 8, especially as the meta's kind of like shifted around, and it just seems like this should have always been viable in some kind of capacity, where it's like, okay, Sniper's 50% more damage, Torrent is 50% more damage. So if you're doing something that's making you crit on low health, it's the same as like kind of always critting, and that's just going to be based off the Snipe Shot. You didn't even need Snipe Shot to be successful. And then thinking about the Inteleon, like we swap out Choice Specs for Life Orb, we play into the Dynamax so we survive, we can like run Modest Airstream, or have like weird hit point investment for like extra durability, and then like Airstream for the speed, we do the Water Dynamax move, I forget what it's called, we're taking less Life Orb damage because we are Dynamax boosted, like Air Slash Surf, that's a KO, now we're at +1, now it's Rain, so we have all that crazy damage, and it doesn't matter that we're like losing the little bit from Specs and Life Orb diff. And then we just outspeed everything and win. And we still have coverage. How did that not work? And even if you're not Dynamaxing Inteleon, or we bring it into Generation 9 where it can't Dynamax, we have All Reliable on the starters where you just go like, endure some kind of berry into the ability. And if you get that Pokemon sweeping position, it becomes devastatingly powerful. To the point like, yeah, we don't need Hydro Pump at that point. We just have reliable Surf, and then we just do damage, and it's going to be alright. The idea here is like, yeah, you endure, Patea Berry procs, you get special attacks, and that's like you have specs and you can choose your moves. and they just kind of like coverage out, and you do crazy, silly amounts of damage. There's also the Substitute, and Sub just gets more and more powerful. Like, the more anti-stall you have on your team, the better, since Generation 8, but again, maybe that was always the secret. Like, Encore in Generation 6 could have just won you, like, 10% more games or something wild. That's the realization I'm getting out of Generation 9. But, like, yeah, you just, like, throw up a sub. You can sub yourself down into a Potato Berry and still win. Or if they're, like, a setup Pokemon, we showed you kind of don't need it. Like, yeah, Specs damage does this, but, like, you hit them on setup, and then they break your sub, and you hit them again. Like, you're 2-hit KOing a lot without Specs. It's going to be fine, and then, like, you're just in the driver's seat. Or you get some weird position where if you somehow have Sub and Torrent going, you're just winning. And that's also why I have the 20 EVs here, because when you're doing the sub thing, it's just kind of silly if you have, like, an odd number, and then you sub 4 times down to 1 hit points, when all you have to do is sub 3 times, get exactly to a quarter, and then Potato Berry is going to activate, or your Satellite Berry, or whatever. And I guess it means you're also going to be more resistive of a Aqua Jet, and maybe survive at 25%, even though there's, like, some ferocious Aqua Jetting out there. I don't know, like, 25%, 1%, you're probably dead if you just get outsped or priorityed anyways, but just something to consider. Like, yeah, you do that, you turn it online sooner instead of, like, stalling the extra turn and maybe having something weird happen, and then you're still in a very powerful position. So you can run soft anti-setup Mondo damage Inteleon, also with, like, the choice specs. So let's go and then show that. You're just better off with the Torrent because maybe you survive not a crazy move. I mean, 70-65 is getting wiped out by, like, any strong neutral offensive pressure. But, like, somehow if you survive and, like, Torrent just activates for free while spec'd into Surf, you're extra winning the game. And then Inteleon has so many flavors, it can actually be very difficult for your opponent to deal with it. So now this is where we go Sniper, Snipe Shot, Razor Claw. So Razor Claw 1 stage, Snipe Shot, that's going to be another stage, and then we're getting that extra damage without having to do, like, Torrent shenanigans. Okay, what does that look like? Well, that goes into crit ratios, which are weird and scale incredibly aggressively. So Generation 7 had a stealth nerf that was not announced where it went from 116 to 124. However, if you go +1, it's all the same. And then +2 has that nice Generation 6 buff, but for some reason I saw, like, more crit strats in Generation 4 or 5. It's weird. Maybe some in 6, but Mega's kind of bullied those out. And then, like, yeah, so if you just get to +2, 50% chance to crit. That's this. You run Razor Claw and then Snipe Shot, and there's a 50% chance you just do 2.25 times more damage. So what does that look like? It's actually incredible and unbelievable. You have a 50% chance to just one-hit KO a Golden Go on your Snipe Shot with a neutral move. And that's, like, without terrestrialization getting involved. Now, no crit, again, we're then losing, like, over 2 times the amount of damage, but you can still, like, two-shot it, and depending on the Golden Go, let's just say it's, like, trying to nasty plot or something, without choice specs, Shadow Ball just isn't enough to KO you. So, like, you survive, and then it's K. And this is on Timid. So you're preserving your sweeping out speeds. You can 2-hit KO a lot of Pokemon with a 50% chance to just one-shot them, which could be silly and an easy 1-for-1 plus. And unless it's a, like, heavy wall-breaking Pokemon that can, like, neutrally one-hit KO you, it's just looking really good for the Inteleon. Now, as we've seen, Terra Water isn't really that much of a need. Now, I think you can still run it because it just makes sure you deal with everything, and if the opponent doesn't have any Pokemon faster than 120 speed left, you just win. And there's also just, like, a lot of strength in water to where, like, oh, if it's not a Scarf Chi-Yu, you just win. Ting-Lu matchup. Let's see how that looks. Okay, you're not one-shotting a Ting-Lu. That would have actually been ridiculous, but you're two-shotting it, and it has to be full tank, which means it doesn't get to do anything. It's a 30% chance, I guess, that it lands, like, a Fissure on you. If it's actually using just an offensive move, Throat Chop or the Earthquake, I mean, it's kind of spooky that a completely uninvested Pokemon can do that much to you, but you win. That's kind of the name of the game on Inteleon, is that you just win. So it's a 1-for-1 plus, and it can keep running things over. Also, it kind of puts you in that sweet spot where you're just frail enough to survive just enough to where if it's a higher roll Earthquake, Ting-Lu's actually doing you a favor because now you're actually going to be getting the Torrent boosting and you're one-shotting the rest of the opposing team. And this is also where, like, the comparison between Generation 8 and Generation 9 gets kind of weird, because, like, okay, maybe Inteleon couldn't do anything against water types, even with going Dynamax, but I mean, just slamming Airstreams should have meant and led up to something, especially if you can, like, find crit sniper inside of it or something. I don't know. So, like, okay, that could be an issue, but, like, Terra Grass on the Inteleon means, yeah, you come in, you specs, you're super effective, you switch out, you reset, and then you just come in and you clean up on 120 speed with still Surf, Stab, Specs, which, as we saw through the damage calculations, is filthy. As absurd as it sounds, and it seems like no one in Generation 8 committed to it, you team build around Inteleon, and it's one of the most rewarding Pokemon to just, like, all in with. It sounds impossible, but yeah, you just make, like, a team that really hates water-type Pokemon, and Inteleon's gonna do the rest. And even after all that, Inteleon has another viable moveset. So, this thing is just dangerous with what it can pull out. And if the opponent misreads even a little bit, then Inteleon can also, like, run away with the game. So maybe it's just too high IQ of a Pokemon. But even then, like, no matter what you pick, it's just RNG if the opponent is, like, responding to it or not. You just play it. So you don't even need that. It's pretty free. So what's going on with this moveset is that you proc the Landsat Berry through the previous things we talked about, where you just endure, stack up, and you're good to go. But I think, as we've seen with this kind of generational shift, and also all of this, like, anti-setup, but that's because there's a lot of setup Pokemon, like, you just sub, and then it keeps your options open to where, like, yeah, you can just throw out Snipe Shot Snipers, or you sub into the Landsat Berry, gives Focus Energy effect. Focus Energy effect is baton passable, but also means you have 100% chance to crit. And as we saw, you just do silly amounts of damage. So, like, okay, you sub, and even if Golden goes for Nasty Plot, well, then you win anyways, because you go Snipe Shot. Like, Snipe Shot, he hits you, break sub, you outspeed Snipe Shot. Golden Go gets KO'd for those trades right there on the greed. In case, like, it's sub versus sub, you can keep breaking sub on Snipe Shot, Ice Beam, depending on, like, if it's a Grass-type Pokemon or something. Eventually get down to Landsat Berry. And now you're just always having Golden Go one-shot potential. And then it also converts that you have a 50% chance for your Ice Beam to crit, so that could be nasty. Or maybe you tack in the Dark Pulse, where 50% chance this crits, finds crazy damage on top of it, and then they get flinched on top of it. So, like, maybe you can tap out a Water-type Pokemon or something with this. Because, yeah, Ice Beam, Snipe Shot, you get walled out by Water, that's why you just sub out, and then you're passing 50% chance to crit onto some other Pokemon that probably doesn't even care about the crits. It also opens up, like, anti-defensive setup because of the power of crit, and it's just good. I don't get it. And people are gonna be like, well, why didn't you play Verlisify? It's so good. Well, I'm a legitimate player, so there's hundreds of competitively viable Pokemon, and then thousands of movesets and EV combinations, so I can't build and play them all. And I also have, like, a different kind of style, but Generation 9 and also Generation 8 showed I'm very adaptable. I can just kind of plug and play any Pokemon and any team and, like, really make it work. The Houndstone strat has, like, extra showed that off, so, like, yeah, I probably could have made Inteleon just, like, super busted. I was just having too much fun being, like, really busted with Togekiss and my Toxapex strats and stuff, and then Hippo came through, and Clefable ended up being, like, 80% of my carry because Clefable comes in, and then just, like, always won the game. The burden shouldn't be on me to be the only cracked competitive Pokemon player that can just discover and play anything, and I told, like, 150,000 of you that this is it, and it even says OP in the title, and it just didn't materialize, and I don't know why. Well, I kind of said why in the beginning of the video, but still, it's, like, absurd. So, yeah, Inteleon's looking really strong. Now, I don't know when Rule Set's going to update. Rule Set C is going on until at least the end of June, which is stupid and unfortunate, but, like, can still play it when it comes out. I don't know. Like, the Generation 9 Meltdown keeps progressing, and after Hisuian Typhlosion, I don't know what Pokemon is anymore, even just, like, thinking all the way back to the optimizations that were left on the table from previous generations, even though I found a lot of them. Like, I was the only one running Mega Sableye setup in Generation 6, and I dumpstered everyone with it. My win rate was like 80%. It was unreal. But no one else picked it up, And you're also seeing this in like a lot of other games to where people just look at the tier list, they look at like some crappy build guide, and they only commit to that, and then like they get defensive of this thing they just kind of took from somewhere else and got married to, instead of actually trying to develop and grow anything else themselves. And we saw it with Pokemon Unite, where like, oh, this trash build got more popular because that's just the viral nature of YouTube. Also, I get suppressed because of dislike botting and like manual YouTube blacklist and stuff. And then people just defaming me even though I was the best player, or at least like top 3 behind D-Lies and OG was taken. And my game takes were just the best, but people didn't like that, so they just rejected it and deliberately made themselves worse. And we've been seeing that in Pokemon since I hit the scene, but like it's just, it can't be this bad. It can't be this unreal. Where like, it's just like gamers just that incompetent, where they follow the fake meta build, they NPC out, and then it just kind of shows that like, wow, everyone's clueless. It's all fraudulent. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.